talked about walking away, reflecting on and thinking about developing a coaching philosophy, right? And to do that, we need to know two things: know ourselves, know our objectives. So we've been talking about knowing ourselves. We started with the gospel as the lens through which we see everything. Rick talked about not just knowing the gospel, but experiencing it. And then how that influences our identity. Is our identity in Christ, or is it in our performance? And John talked about just how our understanding of our identity in Christ and how that determines our identity. What God says about it, the finished work of Christ on the cross defines our identity, not what we do. And then how that how that influences our motivation. Is our motivation to glorify God or to glorify self? And I think we've been going around, just talking about how all of that plays out. We've all felt that, right? I think Dan talked about king chasing versus ring chasing, and just what are our motivations, and then we talk about how all of that plays out within competition. And I loved how Martin just kind of, how he just kind of kept pointing all of that back to how we react and respond within competition can be traced back to our identity, right? And so that's kind of where we've kind of wrapped up that first piece of knowing yourself, but we're going to start jumping into knowing our objective. But it's interesting how all of that is connected, and we really wanted to kind of take time to unpack that first piece of knowing ourselves, because it just determines so much of what, looking forward and what our purpose is. I've shared this story last year, so I'm going to make this really short. But over 30 years ago, I was coaching collegiately, and we were having, it was an interesting season, and we were toward the end of the season, and we were having a game where we felt like it was going to be a bit of a game changer for us in terms of the season and everything, and we started the game, and long story short, it became an intense game. The referee, the calls, the intensity, everything. It ends up, where I'm riding the ref all game. The game finishes, and I walk out and absolutely lay into the referee. Up one side, down the other, you name it, what he was as a ref, as a person, the whole 9 yards. So as soon as I finished just abusing this guy, I said everything I want to say. I turned around, and there's all my players just standing there looking at me. I'm a believer at the time. My players weren't. And I was suddenly I just thought, oh, God, I'm going back to what Martin was saying. You get that embarrassment and think what am I doing? And so I talked to my guys, apologize to my guys, go home, tell my wife what happened. And I remember telling her, if I can't control myself, I shouldn't be coaching anymore. And I remember seriously considering, this is it. This is my last season. I hated the feeling. I can't do it anymore. It's a Saturday. Next morning, woke up on a Sunday. Still that embarrassed feeling. I didn't sleep well that night. Go to church. Just couldn't stop thinking about the game. It's all just that embarrassment, that everything. Every time I thought about a different detail, that ramification. And I'm just sitting there in church, I remember being all the way back on an aisle a little bit next to my wife, thanks. Nice fill in here. But I remember being there and just waiting for the service to be over, right? Just waiting, finally he finishes, and I'm just ready to leave. So it's there, they're finishing up all the service with all the offerings and all that kind of stuff. And I'm right on the aisle. Finally, the guy just, I'm sitting there, the guy comes up to me. I go to reach up for the offering plate, and I look up. It was the referee. I had no idea he went to my church. So I kind of freeze a little. I take the plate, I give it to my wife, I'm like, that's the referee. And I'm sitting there like I'm starting to sweat a little bit. Like I kind of take a little side eye, like, yeah, that's him. Oh my God. And he just keeps going back and back. And finally, I just can't take it anymore. I go to the back of the church, and I go to him. It was just us standing at the back of the church. And I apologize, and he's gracious enough to forgive me. But I just remember standing there thinking, how did I get here? Like, I'm a nice guy, I like people, but I'm apologizing at the back of a church for abusing this guy the day before. And I realized at that point, like, this was an issue of my heart, and I needed heart surgery. I needed to cut some stuff out that I didn't even know was there. But it began me on a journey. And so much of what we've talked about during this time so far it's been that same journey where, like, I was coaching out of a wounded heart. And I hadn't processed all of those things yet, right? And so rather than coaching out of a transformed heart, where we have a kingdom perspective and we're stepping into all of these different opportunities that are in front of us and responding out of the Spirit. That was a new concept. That was a journey. That's why we start with knowing ourselves. As Martin was sharing, like, in different stories, and we talked, and like, we all have a story, right? We all have, like, different things that happen. That's because, like, we all have baggage. We've all walked in here with baggage today. And so really, like, what this whole process has hopefully been about a little bit of a starter, or lit the flame a little bit, is getting that bag off, taking it off, and starting to unpack all those lies that we've believed, which had become our default, and replacing those lies with truth. So we want to keep moving forward, because, like, our identity, our motivation, who we are, knowing ourselves, determines where we're going and what we're going to be doing, right? So we're gonna talk about team a little bit, and it's, again, this will resonate obviously with you guys as coaches, but that powerful platform, that powerful relationship between a coach and a player. Billy Graham said that a coach can influence more people in 1 year than most people can in a lifetime. I mean, that's pretty significant, right? And so we understand that platform and that we have. And then you think about the environment that we're in, where it's like a microcosm of life, high highs, low lows, every emotion you can imagine throughout a season. And so you're captaining and overseeing this whole dynamic, and that's the influence that we have. Because in reality, yeah, we're coaching, but we're really life influencers. We're life influencers. And so along with that, there's just so many different responsibilities that we have and hats that we wear. So we want to just talk through some of the, this isn't like exhaustive, like there's roles that we have that are like, might be recruiting or administrative things and all that. We're just going to sample six of these roles that we have that are more relational based, and just to kind of like talk through, okay, what are all these different things that we do and why do we do them? Wrong way, so there we go. So first role, we're just going to go across like what the role is, the action that it has, like what do we do? But then what's the result? What are we really looking for in all of this? So for example, one of the first things we do, as coaches, we're a teacher. All right? pretty straightforward. I think we kind of all have experienced that. What does a teacher do? Trains, teaches, right? Not rocket science. And what's the result? Learning, right? As we kind of dig into that a little bit, though, I mean, it's like it's one thing to look at it there, but you think, okay, there's a lot of nuance to that too, though, isn't there? I mean, all the different learning styles and you know, your teaching style, and then you're teaching about so many different things and all the training and the different training methods and everything. So there's a lot there, but the bottom line is, that's one of our roles, and the result is that we want our players to be learning, right? Another one, a mentor. What does a mentor do? They model. The result is application. So for example, this is an example from like a youth club, all right? Luke, one of our coaches that works in one of our refugee communities, he was going somewhere, had some errands to do. So he had a couple of boys, and he said, hey, go ask your parents if you can go with me, and I just got some errands to do. I'm going to run by the Charlotte Eagles office. And they're like, okay, so they ran off. Their parents said, yeah, good. He'd already built a relationship with the family. So they come back, and they pile in his car. So they're driving around through the traffic, get cut off a little bit, but okay, Luke's all right, he's composed, whatever. They get to the store where they're going, he gets what he needs, and while he's there, he strikes up a conversation with the woman behind the counter. And they get into a little talk about some different things, and ended up encouraging her before they left. Then they get back in the car, they go to the Eagles office, they walk in, and I remember being there when they walk in. I see Luke walk in, and then I see a boy walk in behind him, and then here's another one walking in behind, and there's a third one walking in. And they all walk in, but as Luke walks up, he sees some of the other coaches in the office, goes up, giving a hug, hey, how you doing? And so Luke was not just running errands and just threw some kids in the car. Luke was modeling a lot of different things that day. He was going about his business, but everything that he was doing and everything that we do, we are modeling something. So when Luke was driving, they saw somebody, the kids are watching him drive and getting cut off and keeping composure. He's like, oh, that's what patience looks like. Then they see him at the store and how he's reacting to the woman. And, oh, that's what respect looks like. And then they go to the Eagles office, and then they see how we go, oh, that's what love and family looks like. Everything that we do, we're modeling. So the opportunity for us as mentors, for our players at whatever level they are, they're able to see and apply that to their lives because they're seeing it real time. Yikes. Sorry, guys. There we go. Next one, a friend. What does a friend do? They listen. And the result is trust. Trust is the basis of any healthy relationship. But this sometimes takes action, right? And, a lot of times, like, when we're busy, but just that little bit of, like, going that extra mile of, like, listening to our players. Being active listeners. Hey, how's it going? They all have things going on in their lives. The position that we hold and the opportunity for us to listen to them builds trust. And again, what's our purpose? Transformation. How are we getting there? We're building relationship, building trust. Next one is a motivator. What does a motivator do? Inspires. And the result is effort. This obviously can be applied like, in a game, game sense, but even in life. What's the result? What are we wanting our players to be walking away with? But through the game, we're able to inspire them and motivate them so that they understand that, hey, I can achieve things when I put effort toward things. An encourager. An encourager empowers, and the result is confidence. One of the one of the definitions of the opposite of encouragement, discouragement, right? And one of the definitions of that is actually like to take courage out of somebody. What a disgusting thought that is. But we want to be somebody that is putting courage in them. Why? So that they feel empowered. We want our players to be stepping into whatever God is calling them to do. As they grow, as they, Lord willing, know Him and grow in Him, we want them to have that confidence to take on whatever God's calling them to. And then lastly, a shepherd. What does a shepherd do? Cares and guides. And the result is spiritual growth. As we were doing a training similar to this in Greece, and it was for a large group of Iranian refugees that had resettled in Athens. And I don't know if you know this, but the Persian church is the fastest growing church in the world right now. And so there's all these brothers and sisters from Iran who are there growing in their faith through churches throughout Turkey. Turkey, but we were in Greece this time. And we were talking about this whole idea of being a shepherd. And it was interesting because there were a number of guys in there that were literally shepherds. So I'm like, okay, well, you guys come up here and tell me what it means. But it's what you would think. It literally is that whole thing. Hey, we protect them, we feed them, we take them where they need to go. When one of them's gone, we can, all the metaphors that we've heard about that is literally what they do. And so this whole idea of just, shepherding our players and just seeing spiritual growth take place. I don't know if are you guys familiar with the Engel scale by any chance? Some of you might, some of you, may not. But the Engel scale, it's basically this spectrum of spiritual position, right? So, over here you might have and there's different versions of this, but just to simplify this, there might be a -3 where it's like, somebody that is just opposed to God, doesn't care, doesn't believe in nothing, just doesn't want anything to do with who God is. A -2, maybe somebody that okay, I believe in God, but, I'm not, not really, maybe they're not really sure who Jesus really is, or the importance of that. A -1 might be somebody who, they're understanding who Christ is, and not only that, but how does that apply to their own lives, and they're starting to process that. A 0 would be what we would sort of all kind of understand of that, time where somebody comes to Christ or is baptized and makes that that decision, hey, God, it's that aha moment of, I want to follow you. I believe who you are and I want to follow you. A +1 might be somebody that then is just growing in their faith a little bit, then somebody that's being discipled, now somebody's that +3 would be somebody that's discipling others, right? So there's this spectrum, right? And all of us are on the spectrum, by the way. Everybody is on the spectrum somewhere, right? But so often, when we talk about transformation, or we think about our players and our team, and we focus so much on the 0, the aha moment here, at the expense of sometimes, or maybe not the expense of, but without that maybe recognition of understanding, hey, this whole process is our job. Our job is not to pull off these 0s. That's not our job. That's the Holy Spirit's job. Our job is to be faithful and obedient with every player that God is putting in front of us. And we're just pointing them to the cross and pointing them toward growth, right? I liked what Steve shared last night when we were talking about discipleship after dinner last night. Chime in if I'm hacking this up. But and Andy won't mind me mentioning his name, but Andy and Becky were here last night. They were in the other room with parents, with families, and keeping balance. Thanks, Rick. But awesome family. But years ago, Andy played for Steve, and Andy was not a believer at the time, and there were some interesting conversations that they had, and Andy was a little, provoking at times, or just questions, but they talked, and so Andy ended up leaving that school and still was not a believer, but 3 years later, somewhere down the road, somebody else met him, built a relationship with him, and ended up leading him to Christ. And Andy experienced that zero, that aha moment. And so the thing, what I liked about that was how Steve just explained, hey, I didn't know what, my time with Andy, I wasn't sure what was going to happen when he left. I didn't know where he was going to go. I didn't know if I would see him again. But the whole intentionality behind this is that realization. Steve was faithful with where he was and with where Andy was, and we're just called to be obedient, to just keep pointing people to Christ no matter where they are. And God may take, you may have players that are a -2, and maybe God's just using you to move them from a -2 to a -1. Awesome. Praise the Lord. Maybe you have somebody that's a +1 and you're moving them to a +2 or +3. Awesome. Whatever that might be, our job is simply to be faithful in that process. So all these different roles that we have, there's probably plenty others, but one of the things to kind of think about, you may look at some of these and some of them may resonate with you. It's like, yeah, that's kind of my sweet spot. Or you might look at some of these and you think, yeah, that one I'm not really comfortable with, not sure about, I don't know. But obviously, just understand, we all have different gifts and strengths and abilities and as well. And so there's some of these things. I mean, maybe like one of your spiritual gifts is encouragement, and that's just okay, you can just, that's an easy one for you, and that's something that you kind of prioritize on your team. But whatever it might be, whether it's understanding what are all these different roles that I do have, and how am I addressing those? Are these some areas that I need to grow in? Are these some areas that I need to bring somebody else in, right? So let me just finish with this real quick. We're just gonna tie this up just quickly in 2 minutes. Talk to somebody, 2, 3, whatever. What are some of those things, just to process what we've just talked about? What are some of those things that you feel are in your sweet spot? What are some of those things that maybe are a bit of a struggle for you? Just start to identify a couple things for a minute and a half. Go ahead.